Hey, as if on cue. Yeah. Susan, take it away.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about the film, and then I'll see if you all have questions, because I'd love to hear. Oh, thank you so much. So I'm just so thrilled for you all to be here and to see this film. And I went to the Pentanel in 2022 and made this film and worked with Abby Martin. And so I want to publicly thank her for donating the archival fire footage. And there are many people there who helped me in different ways with Portuguese interviews and different things like that. Part of what's happening, as you can tell, the Amazon rainforest is very degraded, so there's decreased rain happening. The Pentanel naturally floods every year, and normally that's about 6 months, so it's reduced to 4 months now. The water in the rivers are lower, so all of that's related to the degradation of the Amazon, which is not just caused by deforestation. They've had 5 years of severe climate drought. You saw the cracked earth. It's cracked like 6 inches deep, and I walked on that. It's hard as a rock. It's like concrete. And so when lightning hits, everything goes up in flames. And the other thing that's happening is the Amazon creates its own weather. So all of that condensation goes into the atmosphere, and it's like a flying river. And there's more water in those flying rivers than there is in the land rivers. But those are decreased also. And the Amazon is having a harder time. The drought is affecting the Amazon's ability to create its own ecosystem. It's part of what's happening. So these fires in 2020, the drought was so bad that the Pentanel didn't flood. And there were fires that came over, climate change fires came over from Bolivia, and that's what caused the fires in 2020 to be so bad. So you just saw ordinary people out there fighting fires, and that was also during the pandemic. So they also brought food up the river. And 2021, there were fires again from lightning strikes. And the men you saw those 4 men plus Raphael. And you also saw Raisa, who's a biologist, out there fighting fires. So those 4 men got trained as firefighters, and a lot of equipment was donated. April Kelly really raised a lot of money through her organization or nonprofit, and also Abby Martin. And so there was firefighting equipment donated. They were able to nip the fires in the bud in 2021. This film showed at another film festival in November, and the morning that showed, I texted or sent a message to Abby on WhatsApp, and I said, our film is showing at 2 o'clock. And she WhatsApped me back these videos of her being in a boat on the giant rivers, and there's smoke everywhere. Everything's on fire. So in November, there were 60 of 62 areas of the Amazon were in a state of emergency from fire, and it pulled the firefighters, the few fighter fires and a few small planes they had in the Pentanel, pulled them away. So she has a video where she's out there and she's like in tears and no one's coming. They did finally come back, and I believe the fires are out now, but it was burning for several months. So it can't keep doing this, can't keep recovering in this way. One of the things we can do is to use small local banks, not the big banks, but the small local ones are credit unions, because they don't loan money to fossil fuels. They don't loan money to corporations that are involved in deforesting, because they loan money locally. So that's one big thing that we can do. Another thing, that we can do is talk to our legislators about the Forest Act. That is a bill that's already, a similar law has been passed in the UK already, and it would require corporations to prove that their supply chain, that they got their goods that they're bringing into the country, were not, created or whatever on newly deforested land. So that bill is already created, and that's something that would help the Amazon a lot, because there's a lot of illegal lumber that's coming into this country from the Amazon. So I'll stop there I'll tell you one other thing. Corporations like Cargill, is involved in soy. There's a lot of soy being planted in the savanna next to, you saw the savanna, Cerrado savanna, and it's half planted with soy. And they are funding the Brazilian agribusiness lobby. And a lot of those people have gotten in as lawmakers, and they are passing laws and trying to overturn the Constitution in Brazil, which protects indigenous people and indigenous land, and they're trying to take away their indigenous rights to their land because they want to build highways and roads into the Amazon, and they want to plant GMO crops in the Amazon. And we can't, first of all, the Amazon is a treasure. I grew up in New Jersey learning about the Amazon is this amazing place. But and of course the people there deserve, they're treasures. It's a world treasure. But second of all, we cannot address climate change if the Amazon dies. As you saw in there, it's 150 to 200 billion tons of carbon are stored in the Amazon rainforest, and if it dies, that will slowly decay and give off all that carbon over 30 to 60 years, and we will not be able to overcome that. So I'm going to stop there, but our corporations are complicit. They're creating incentives for local people to do criminal acts, and it's wrong. It's just wrong. But I'd like to hear if you guys have any questions. Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask? Yes.
What do you think of the John Grisham book?
I'm sorry, let me ask, I'm sorry, yes?
What made you start on this journey, being from New Jersey? Like, what was it that actually led you to go to the Amazon?
I actually grew up half the time, a little bit older in Florida, and then I moved to some different places, but I went on a nature photography tour. I have a journalism degree and a PhD in education, and so I've been doing small films for nonprofits for 20 years. And so even when I do something, I went there and it was fun, but I had all this beautiful footage because I did mostly video because I love video. So I talked to Paulo Boat in the film, who's a tour guide, and he connected me with Abby, and I said, can I donate some footage to, so I ended up creating a feature film, which is like a beginning film, Jaguar Wildlife Corridor, but it has a lot of good information in it, and donated it to her. And then when the fires happened, I was like, I talked to her and I said, can I do a film about the fires? First I asked her if I could interview her about women's leadership, and she said, why don't you come out and interview me on the river? And I was like, how am I gonna afford to do that? But then I asked if I could do the film about the fires, and she had 2 interns. She had tried to, we're trying to do a film, and it just didn't work. It was hard. They're interns, So this happened, and I just put my heart in it. What was your question?
I don't know how many people in this audience ever heard of the word Pantanal before this movie. I read all John Grisham's books, and one of them was Off Lawyers, and he went down to Brazil and he wrote about the Pantanal. Have you read it?
No, I have not read his book.
I found it fascinating. It's about alcoholism, but it's also about the Pantanal, and I found the whole thing fascinating. And in the book, I've read it twice for some reason, and it mentioned that we can't blame Brazil for fucking up nature,
right? Because
America has done the same thing.
Well, also Brazil has excellent environmental laws.
I'm not an expert in this at all, but the Pantanal to me is just a fascinating subject.
Yeah.
And I just stumbled upon this theater, and I love the movie.
Oh, great.
But I don't know what to say. I'm not sure I'm an expert to even ask a question, but
it's fine.
It was a fascinating movie to watch for me because I read that book twice. It's John Grisham. He's a lawyer writer, and the book was fascinating.
I'll have to look at it. I appreciate you sharing that.
And I read it, and it's like just another world.
Yeah, it is. It's magical.
But
it really is.
If they go in and they destroy it and build houses, whatever, I don't know what to say. Do they have the right to do that? Do not have the right to do that? I don't know. I just find the whole thing fascinating. And,
Thank you, that means a lot to me. I
Okay.
appreciate it. Did you have a question?
What was the most challenging part of working on it? What was the hardest hurdle to get over to complete the project?
Well, Abby speaks Portuguese, I don't, so they helped me with I had my releases in Portuguese and I had my interview questions in Portuguese written, so I had to get people to ask those questions. Some of it is being out in Abby's boat is about, it's about from here to here long, and it's, oh, okay.
I'll talk to you outside, okay?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Very beautiful.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And it's a small boat, like it's about this wide, and when you sit in it, you can put your hands in the water about 6 inches. And there's caiman in the water, and they're not aggressive as much. I mean, alligators aren't really that aggressive, but they're pretty laid back. But you don't want to mess with them either. And there's piranhas in the water. And and so there are bigger boats there, and when the boats come through, the wakes are big, and they hit her boat, and so I was sitting in the front, and it would go bam like that, like over, and she would try real hard to kind of go in behind him. That, I got kind of sore after a while. That was a challenge, and keeping my camera, and I was a single person crew because I didn't have any funding for this film, so I filmed it, I edited it, I did 16 to 20 hour days for 11 days. I was there 14 days and then 11 days straight, so it was exhausting, but it was like wonderful exhausting,
Congratulations, it came out awesome.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. What kind of equipment, what do you shoot on? Because it's beautiful footage.
Thank you. I rented a Canon R5 camera. It's a mirrorless camera. It was the newest one at the time, or almost the newest one. And it has almost the same resolution as the Red cameras, the real fancy ones, that they use. And now it's almost the same color palette, because I researched it. And then I rented a long 100 to 500 zoom, so I could zoom in and out. And all of the wildlife footage is filmed handheld from the boats, mostly. And the interviews are filmed with a tripod. And I had a boom mic for the interviews, most of the interviews. And I did film some things with my cell phone because it's 4K. So I did, some of the things in the boat are filmed. But one of the challenging things was that staying at Panthera and you didn't get to see how far out it is. It's 4 hours to get there across 120 wooden bridges that are rickety, and they wash out and stuff. And so the electricity goes out for about 60 to 90 seconds at least once or twice a day, and the internet upload stopped after a while, and I couldn't use my cell phone anymore, which I really wanted to use it for the interviews with the firemen at night because I thought it would pick up just a little bit better, but I couldn't because it wouldn't upload anymore. So that was a challenge too. There are a number of challenges, but I just love being there. Anybody else have a question?
I was a little late, so I don't know if you answered already, but what's the most rewarding part of making the film?
When I interviewed the firefighters, no one had ever asked them what it was like for them. And the main firefighter that you saw, Luzio, he's the manager of the ranch, and then Raphael's the supervisor. He just gave me this huge bear hug, like just folded me in his arms and hugged me so hard and thanked me. And he spoke a little bit more English than some of the other guys, and I just knew, it was just clear how much it meant to them that somebody wanted to hear their voices and what their experiences was and what this was like for them. And I'm working on the feature film now, and one of the other men was talking about how, there's no roads into the park, so you have the park, and then you have Panthera's land, and then you have the town. And so they were trying to do fire breaks, and they were trying to protect the roads too, so firefighters could get in and out the bridges were on fire. So when they had to go to protect the park, they had to walk through jungle. And there's jaguars in there, and they got charged by water buffaloes and all that kind of stuff, you know, and it was, you know, and so when the government fire, it took 4 days for the government firefighters to show up, because this was under the previous administration under Bolsonaro, and, you know, there's a lot of, he really defunded a lot of the environmental agencies tremendously, which is, you know, part of why they had you know, Lewis really tried. He's made some really big progress, and he's decreased deforestation almost by 60% by the summer.
Well, you were talking about the firefighters themselves, but what kind of equipment do they actually have access to? Because, I mean, I imagine they can't get like big fire trucks out there to do anything. So what equipment do they actually have to fight those fires?
So they have these floating things that are about like this big, and they put them in the rivers or in the inlets from the rivers, and they're pumps, and they'll pump water into them, and then they have those yellow packs that you saw on their back, and with hoses, and that's what they're using. And then there's
gardening hoses.
yeah, and then they have a couple trucks, and they had some they're like big square water tanks, kind of plastic, you know, those heavy plastic ones with the wire around them. So they might have 4 of those on a truck. They had a big, maybe like the length from here to here of a, it looks like a water tank, big water tank on it. And it had water in it, but it got stuck in the mud at one point. So they had to drain the water out of it to get it out of the mud. So, I mean, they had so many really tough challenges trying to do this, you know. But they did use that at different points. They were able to use it and some more of those were donated after 2020. They had 1 or 2 more, and some of the lodges burned that first year that were inland, because that main highway that's 4 hours long is called the Transpentinera, and that's the dirt road with all the bridges. And so there's like some lodges along there close to the Pantanal, but Porto Joffre, that, you know, they're ecotourism. Ecotourism has really saved the lives of jaguars, because even if they kill a cow, which is a really huge loss for a local farmer, they don't shoot them anymore. They used to kill jaguars, and now they see them as very valuable. And jaguars, you know, really, they don't attack people. I was 6 feet from a jaguar on land by accident, and it looked at me and I looked at it, and I just kind of ran as fast as I could back to the boat, and it didn't attack me, and it was behind me, so it could have. You know, that was Medrosa that you saw in there with the 2 cubs. So, and you can get like 10 feet from them in the boats, and you know, it's interesting. I have some footage that were the baby jaguars, you know, they just watch the boats, you know, they're very aware of what we're doing. It's not like, you know, we're invisible. They're just curious. They're like watching the boats, watching what people, you know, it's hilarious. It's real cute. Yeah, yeah, well, that's true, yeah. It's just
They're just really big.
they're so adorable. Any other questions?
Thank you for doing this.
Well,
Thank you on behalf of everyone for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you. I just, social justice and peace and environmental activism, that's my life's work. And so, you know, I hope you guys will, you know, bank local. And the other thing I want to tell you is I was working with my computer programmer, and literally 3 days ago, I wrote up a climate action treaty, and the website, if you guys, most of you probably have that little flyer, right? At the bottom of it, it has the Saving Jaguars and Ourselves website, which has lots of links about how you can take actions, and everything that's in the film is on that page. And then the climate action treaty, it has 2 main things. One, it has 10 main phases of climate action. And so I watched 3 days of the COP recently, in December. And Al Gore said, and he was fabulous, and that his talk is linked to my website and the treaty website. He said, as soon as we stop using fossil fuels, the earth will start to cool. There's no delay, it will start to cool. And within 30 years, the remaining carbon will dissipate. So he said, there's no reason for us to be, and for youth to feel like, well, I don't have a future, the earth's gonna, there's no reason for that, but we have to phase out fossil fuels. And according to the IPCC, anyway, it's the United Nations agency that does the science of climate change. And their latest, so they put out these reports. And the most recent report says that fossil fuels globally need to peak by next year, 2025. So all these new projects that we're doing in the United States and other places, we need to be not increasing fossil fuels. And I know some of them are meant to replace oil, and that's a decrease, but it's not a big enough decrease. So, and then after we peak at 2025, we need to reduce in about a little bit more than half by 2030, not 2050, 2030. So that's the goal. That's what, and that will save thousands of lives. When you look at something like, when you look at what happened in Pakistan, and the number of people who are dying in these huge disasters, it will save thousands of lives if we can do that by 2030. It will keep many, many people from losing their homes. It will save wildlife. It will help with the extinction crisis, because we're in an extinction crisis. Some of it from climate change and some of it is habitat loss, So those are some big things. And the treaty has 24 things on it. It's a menu, so you don't have to like everything on there. You click what you like, and then you put your email in, and it's private, and you hit submit, and it updates in real time. So it can be used by nonprofits and people trying to pass laws like Elizabeth Warren's anti-corruption law that's on the treaty. They can see the support, and they can use it as a tool to advocate for these really important changes. So it's the Climate Action Treaty 24 in 2024. And if you look at that, there's lots of good information, lots of links to nonprofits, because this is not stuff I came up with. It's a summary, not a complete, it's a big collection of actions and research and work by many thousands of people around the world. So I hope you'll take a chance to look at it and fill it out. Because I just literally finished it 3 days ago, so only 4 people have signed it yet. So I want to hear your voices and express your voices. So, does anybody else have a question? I really appreciate you all being here and in your passion for this film and for these issues. It just means a lot to me. It really does.